Thank you, Charles. That's to Charles Gagne. He's our president-elect of E-Rotary Coastal Club. And this is Philip Zimmerman. I'm the president of E-Rotary Coastal Club. I was speaking a little bit earlier. I'm actually driving between Jackson, Mississippi and Birmingham, Alabama on I-20. So the virtual nature of this experience that we're having is very real. So if you hear a little road noise, that's because I'm driving. Being safe, but I'm driving. And today we're part of this E-Rotary Coastal Club. We've got Charles, as I mentioned. He's actually located in Dularge, Louisiana, which is down South Terrebonne Parish. We also have our speaker, Val Marmillion. I think he's in Key West, Florida. And then, depending upon where the other callers are calling in from, we're diverse in diverse places, and yet we're all addressing a central issue, which is at the heart of E-Rotary Coastal Club, which is our concern for coastal communities and the situations where they find themselves in Louisiana. It has to do with land loss. Other coastal areas, it's coastal erosion, coastal flooding, hurricanes, storms, runoff. We are out of District 6200, Rotary International District 6200, which is southwest Louisiana, I-10 and south from Hammond, Louisiana, all the way back to Lake Charles to the west. And that's where our district is located that we're coming from. Our hope is to eventually expand E-Rotary Coastal membership and involvement throughout the Gulf Coast region, from Florida all the way through Texas, and then eventually to the coasts of Atlantic coast and Pacific coast, and maybe even globally. So we have an opportunity to have a very big footprint of this organization. And if you're interested in finding out more about being in Rotary or what Rotary is all about, you can go to Rotary.org. That's the Rotary International website. It will provide you information on Rotary itself. Or you can go to our website, which is erotarycoastal.org. It's all one word, erotarycoastal.org. And there you'll find information about our club, the prior meetings that we've had up to date, how you can get involved. We have an Apply Now button where you can actually apply to be a Rotarian. We're open for membership right now and love to have if you're interested. And be able to provide you the opportunities to participate with us as we get this organization started and actively serving. Following Val's talk, we will have a presentation, a brief conversation between the Rotarians and those who are interested in becoming Rotarians about some activities we'll be doing in the future. So with that brief introduction, let me go ahead and get the meeting started. Rotary has several traditions. If you go to a Rotary brick and mortar club, or really any Rotary club in the world, they usually start with not necessarily a Pledge of Allegiance if you're in Germany, but they do have whatever they have for their country to honor their country. And in the United States, we honor our flag by saying the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance. You can join with me if you'd like, and then we'll go from there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next Rotary tradition is called the four-way test. This talks about the things we think, say, and do. First is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build a goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? That's the Rotary four-way test. That is our motto as we go out and serve within our communities. And so if you'd like to serve with us, we'd love to have you. Charles, I'm going to turn it over to you and allow you to introduce our speaker today, and then we'll go on to hear Val.
Absolutely. Thank you, Philip. If I could ask any of the participants, if you wouldn't mind muting your phones, please. It just keeps the background noise more tolerable. But anyway, we have a powerful speaker today. Val Marmillion is our guest for today's meeting. Val is deeply entwined in the issues that are related to coastal He has been at this long before coastal was cool, back since 2002. And Val is a great synthesizer. He draws together a lot of elements from the private sector, from the public sector, from the academic sector, and it's been a source of great information and consensus with the America's Wetlands Foundation. It has a lot of accolades, a lot of very tangible success in those arenas. Val is going to speak to us today on the reality of all of this, and then we all probably have a working, maybe even arm's length understanding of coastal issues. Val is going to remind us that this is a very frontline issue, in the trenches issue. So with that, I'm going to pass this over to Val. And look forward to his presentation. And please mute your phones, please.
Well, thanks a lot. And can you hear me fine? Is that good? I appreciate being a part of this experimental and really the future of meeting in many different places. E-Rotary, I think, is a great idea. I've been very familiar with the work of Rotary for many years because it's an organization that actually does more than just meet and help their fellow community members wherever they are. What we have before us with the America's Wetland Foundation is a very difficult challenge, and today I wanted to talk about being on the front lines of that challenge and how not only we as a foundation but the state of Louisiana has taken a leadership role in trying to create some solutions to a challenge that is facing really coastal communities worldwide. If you look at the maps that I have just displayed, in 2009, Louisiana and some of the projections about our coast in southeast Louisiana, the lines were pretty dramatic and scary, and the projections out to 2100 were unthinkable. And so during that time, the America's Wetland Foundation was created originally by the state of Louisiana in a project called 2020, Coastal 2020. And that project was envisioned during Mike Foster's term as governor. And he was very concerned as a fisherman when he went out to fish one day and his GPS said that there was supposed to be land and there was water. He began to form a commission to deal with the issue in a more formidable way. And one of the commission's reports suggested that the world and the nation and even Louisiana needed to know more about what was happening because without public awareness and involvement and engagement, we would never solve a problem that at that time seemed pretty ambitious to solve, but necessary. Well, if you fast forward to today and you begin looking at the land loss maps that were just released on the left side of this image, you will see that the highest scenario in the last Coastal Master Plan became the normal scenario, and that the 100-year flood zones now move past Baton Rouge, Louisiana, consuming most of our coast. And these are only southeast Louisiana images, but most of the coast is consumed. And we most recently had the Baton Rouge floods in the Amite and Comite rivers that have sort of proved these maps beyond the shadow of a doubt to be true. When I was a young boy growing up in Terrebonne Parish and going out every Saturday fishing with my father, this was really in the 1950s and 60s, had land all around us. When we would go out of Cocodrie, we would go fishing, and we would fish for redfish and speckled trout and flounder, and we had all of the healthy wetlands to go through to get out to Ile de Neer or Whiskey Pass, where we would do most of our fishing. It's some of the fondest memories I have, actually, is those days getting up at 4 in the morning and, like probably many of you in your clubs, going out fishing and spending that time. Mr. Zimmerman, I think you'll probably be doing that with your new grandson who's on the way soon. But those memories are something that are going to be gone for future generations if we don't begin to take coastal land loss more seriously. And so that's been the role of the America's Wetland Foundation, to bring to the world the idea that in the United States, the Mississippi watershed all flows down through South Louisiana and a delta that we have named America's Wetland, and that we are in really a prime position to impact the entire world. And as witness to that, we held the World Delta Dialogues in New Orleans and invited scientists and researchers and coastal advocates from around the world to New Orleans for that, to begin a conversation that we continued over in Vietnam and the Mekong Delta with our Corps of Engineers and other partners from the United States, trying to learn in a quick way what we could do to solve the problems of coastal erosion. The America's Wetland Foundation created the notion of a football field of land lost an hour. And most everybody we now talk to about wetland loss knows to say that over the course of an hour, we will lose the equivalent of a football field of land in the coastal areas of Louisiana. And to get a broader national understanding of our problem, we picked two themes. One, that what was happening in South Louisiana was of world ecological significance, and that on the other side of the balance being energy and economic security for our area, the nation, and the world was threatened if we did not get our arms around this coastal erosion problem. To do this and to extend these messages, we worked with various partners on the board and in the creation of an industry council, the state and non-governmental organizations from the local, state, national, and international levels. And also officials. We had to do a pretty big job with elected officials to convince them that the problems in South Louisiana were real, and that was everything from the very localized parish officials to state officials and federal officials. The lack of knowledge was overwhelming.
Val, excuse me. Pardon me for interrupting. Folks, if you could please mute your phones. There's a tremendous amount of background noise going on, and it's very difficult to hear all the presentations. So if you could please just mute your phones right now. If you're on a computer speaker, please go ahead and mute that. Val, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
That's fine. The lack of knowledge among folks who were elected to office was astounding when we began digging through the facts of what the loss of South Louisiana would mean to the world. And so we created these messages that we sent out broadly, and they have been very much accepted and have stuck and have helped us to really make a difference in the awareness. Now, when we started this campaign 15 years ago, people in New Orleans, when we did our surveys and polling and focus groups, did not even consider themselves living in a coastal city. People in Louisiana did not consider themselves a coastal state. And so we had a lot of education to do in terms of having a coast and the value of that coast, which many years ago people at all did not recognize the value of what wetlands provide.
We couldn't have bought it because Marcus bought those two.
I think we have some guys around the table in there. Hey, guys, can you put your phone on mute?
Thank you. Okay, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Sure, thanks.
Okay.
Whoever just made the comment about being 2 weeks, you're the one with the phone that's on. Could you please mute it, please? Thank you.
The slide I'm on now is sort of the formation of a very strategic approach to dealing with this problem in a national and international communication sense. So the America's Wetland Foundation first branded the area America's Wetland after doing research around the country as to what would stick and be important to people to call the area. And then we went into an advocacy phase of talking about what would be lost if we lost the area in South Louisiana, the wetland and Mississippi Delta region. And we targeted our audiences for this message in ways that people would respect the results once these various audiences would come out and say, yes, this is a serious problem. And we also targeted the media, and we did a lot of programs with the media in terms of advertising, billboards, programs on National Public Radio, the popular news, and we worked with weathercasters to start talking about that football field of land lost in South Louisiana each hour and what it meant in terms of the navigation that is provided by the world's largest port system, the movement of goods both east and west and north and south in the Mississippi River region, which was threatened, the loss of seafood as 90% of marine species in the Gulf spend all a part of their life cycle in America's wetland, and the recreational aspects of hunting and fishing for anglers and sportsmen and recreationalists who would lose this land. And as we have seen in the last 3 years, the duck populations are either avoiding the area or moving to other places where there is more wetlands that provide sustenance for them. Once we had set the brand or the ideas in motion, we began programs and convening large bodies in upriver. We had 5 programs that went from New Orleans all the way to Chicago. We had programs along the Intracoastal Canal. We created a conservation corps for volunteer projects to raise awareness. And then we created something called America's Energy Coast, which was an industry council to try to get the private sector more involved in restoration. Our latest work is involving adaptation workshops where we can go into communities following having resiliency workshops and leadership forums and go into communities now so that they can learn what they can do to adapt to change, keep their insurance rates down, and know what to expect as the waters rise and the land sinks. And we've also, and I'll talk mostly about this, have created demonstration projects to show that private landowners can restore their land and make a difference in the private call for support for restoration. I'll ask one more time if the guys around the table, I hear you talking on the phone. Could you mute your call? Hello there. Okay. In the process of, I hear myself talking,
Yeah.
so I think if you can mute your phone there.
Now, on your control panel on the top right, the 3 buttons, if you'll click on that,
Yes.
you'll be able to mute all phones except yourself.
In the process of creating these projects, we have created a number of reports and surveys that really help us to extend the message and to get the word out. And you will see pictures of various ones, even one when we had the Gulf oil spill. We had created immediately a secure Gulf report talking about the ways in which industry could voluntarily work and reduce the impact on the wetlands with operations. We also went over to Texas and Alabama and Florida with our work in a series of resiliency forums where we talked about a study that we had worked with Entergy Corporation to denote the impact of sea level rise and storm events on our infrastructure. And as you might imagine, it was severe, and our 20-year projection from that report, which was called Beyond Unintended Consequences, was that our economies of our coastal regions would not be able to keep up with the loss unless we did something to abate coastal erosion. So that has all led us to the current time frame where, if you look at the upper left of this image, the Intracoastal Waterway runs from Fort Myer to Florida to Brownsville, Texas. But the biggest part of the canal's work is done in coastal Louisiana. And the GIWW, which is the Gulf Intracoastal Waterway, is the second largest waterway in the United States in terms of tonnage, second to the Mississippi River, and most people don't realize that. The other factoid that people don't realize is the GIWW was built by the federal government to support the war effort in the past and to move commerce, but it did not have any provisions for operation and maintenance, O&M monies. And the state of Louisiana has been in dispute with the Corps for years over who's responsible for O&M. Well, that's fine that there's many disputes between states and the federal government. But in this case, the shoreline seepage, or the canal seepage and expansion, and the compromised banks of the Intracoastal Waterway have meant that saltwater intrusion is moving inland, and the GIWW has become a virtual line of demarcation. And so the foundation said we will put our resources into trying to figure out how to shore up the embankments of the Intracoastal, because none of those projects, because of this dispute, are in the state's coastal master plan. And because of the dispute, and we felt that the private sector would have a good opportunity to do really saint work by taking care of the private lands on either side of the Intracoastal to stop saltwater intrusion. If you look at this slide, when we talk about the lines of demarcation, up in the top where it says Catahoula Bay is Lake Salvador, and a very, very thin line is about to be broken between the Intracoastal and that lake, which is the body of water most directly east of Jefferson Parish in New Orleans, and becomes a real problem for storm surge and movement of water across that lake, and moving salt water into the lake, which will kill wetlands up into these parishes above Lafourche, Terrebonne, St. James, St. Charles. These parishes are all threatened, Jefferson, Plaquemine. So we have picked that as an important area. And you can see in the other pictures just where the lake at the bottom of the graphic chart of the GIWW is compromised below Lafitte, Louisiana. And then if you go west, you'll begin to see where the canal embankments are spreading, are being compromised in other places. So the GIWW becomes a huge problem if we're going to have success with our state master plan projects. And so we embarked on two demonstration projects, one where we raised $1 million to shore up a mile of in La Rose, Louisiana, of embankments which had spread out 50 yards or so, and where Delta Farms berms that they had put up to stop the water were eroding, and they had spent about $500,000 over the years on these berms. So we decided that this was a very good place for us to go and try a demonstration project. And our second project that we want to demonstrate is that picture that I showed you of Lake Salvador, where on the left-hand side of this picture, you see it's about to merge into the GIWW and could be a really great problems. Now, these areas exist all along the GIWW in Louisiana, and we think that a private sector attempt to stop shoreline creep in an area that the state and the feds have controversy over and disagree on O&M and fixing the embankments is a perfect place for private sector to begin working. So we did our first project. Up in the right-hand corner, you can see that's Delta Farms, and it is overcome by water now. And then there's a strip of land that we went in where the berm used to be, and you can see it's open water condition into the GIWW right here, and La Rose is right here as a community, and of course Homa's down below that. We took a mile and we went and we determined that we would have a group of partners and work together to use a new product that was made out of recyclable plastics. And it's a permeable product where the grasses grow up at the top and are planted and then eventually farm over the product down into the banks of the embankment and into the water, creating a natural berm that is resistant to wave attenuation and storm surges and will hold the salt water back. This bottom right program is a part of the Lake Salvador again, very near this place, which is over here. This project will hold back the loss of Lake Salvador and freshwater marshes by saltwater intrusion. Our partners were many in doing this demonstration. Ducks Unlimited, the state, Martin Ecosystems, who provided some of the material, the Corps of Engineers, Restore Retreat NGO, and other resource environmental partners, Delta Farms, T-Boy Aquaculture, and GIWW Association. And we worked together to show that you could have a private sector response and do something pretty amazing. So we had $1 million. We used dredge materials, which is an old process. We reduced the cost, expedited permits by piggybacking on permits, and we used recycled materials, created incentives for the private landowner to get more involved, and we did public outreach with media. What we call these kinds of projects is something you may not have heard, is transition projects. And they are projects that we need to do but may not be on the state's master plan because of their size, but are small pockets that could eventually mushroom into huge damage of our ecosystem. And so we have taken on this project and are going to encourage it in the years to come. So this is the Delta Farms berm after we put some mud on top of it. The Eco Shield was delivered and was being planted, and we had some volunteers work with this, and the new sprouts through the permeable plastic coating began to show success. Preparing the levee, of course, you need a little bit of material and just a backhoe in many cases, so it's not expensive to do and does not require large amounts of cement or a bracking that you would normally expect in this process, which is time-consuming and very expensive. This was a mile of EcoShield laid down. You can see the roots taking course through the EcoShield when they were pre-planted, and our evaluation of this was that the percentage of project area stabilized was 200%, because we had started with a half mile and we went to a full mile. There's positive vegetative colonization, which is using new kinds of hardier strain grasses that we had to try and test which would work and which wouldn't. So we planted and replanted over our times. There's strong stem density and plant vigor, the things you want to see to hold back that salt water when it is overlapping at the berms. And the anticipated outcome was that the shoreline, as you can see here, that we protected in just a short amount of time is 10 feet more protected than the shoreline that is not protected. And this was a huge opportunity because it didn't cost a lot. And if you imagine the billions of dollars that we're talking about, we did a full mile of coastal berm and coastline of the GIWW for $1 million. And we anticipate that there's about 30 or 40 miles of the GIWW in Louisiana alone that's compromised. So for a relatively small amount of money, $40 million, we think that we can begin to do the work to shore up this canal, which is so vital to most of us. There's another picture of the protected and then the unprotected where we stopped the project. We had some rough times during this project. We had barges run into the shore and tear up our the lane of our eco shield. We had someone go out on the shoreline and spread weed killer along what we had just planted in a certain portion, not being told that this was a demonstration project. And we had the normal elements that we had to deal with of not knowing which grasses would work, and we replanted and found the solutions to that. So this was a very successful demonstration project. Going forward, we survey Louisiana voters, and we even survey Texas voters quite a bit. And one of the things we found is that our polls suggest that people do think that there is a link to a strong environment and a healthy economy. And many times people pit those forces against each other. And we have been the one foundation that says, no, you have to have everybody at the table to be successful. We do need a strong economy. We have to have a strong tax base for our local communities. We have to have industries that can survive. But we also need the industries and their leaders to be a part of the solution for a strong ecosystem that supports them, and the massive pipeline infrastructure and the navigation canals that we have, and the energy development off our coast. 74% of all Louisiana voters did say in our recent survey that this is the issue of their lifetime. And that gives us encouragement that they will pass that on to their elected officials who can support the next version of the state's master plan to do the larger massive projects, and be supportive as private industry to get us the amounts of money we need to go into these various programs. Our timeline is to go into the field this summer with leadership forums on adaptation so that everybody in communities and stakeholders can know what they're about to face with the new state master plan land loss maps. As I said, the worst case scenario has become the best case scenario in just 5 years. And so the creep of salt water is upon us. Water is over the roads in South Louisiana in many places. And we are having discussions about communities retreating. And we need to abate that so that we do not lose the values of the coast, which have been so important to not only Louisiana, but the country. We will continue polling and representing the voices of Louisiana voters so that we can encourage the political leadership to support the master plan and keep the monies in the trust that have been delivered to Louisiana to do restoration and protection. We will launch later this year, a new media campaign, and with it, we will have trading cards, which are factoids that people can trade and do it online by downloading an app and getting a virtual trading card, which have different facts about what's going on with the wetlands. And we will have advertisements on television with news anchor from Baton Rouge, Andre Moreau, talking about what the wetlands mean to us and what we can do about saving it. So there'll be the facts, the trading cards, and the media that we will do around these facts. We are creating, with our business and industry partners, a restoration registry of projects that are not in the plan, the master plan, but are consistent with the plan and can help in this, what we call transition period, to stop land loss in areas that maybe weren't in the plan because they're just estuaries, but are so critical to the marine and animal life that we have in the region, and as a buffer zone to the communities that lie beyond the estuaries. And then we will create a conservation alliance, a group of private landowners, large and small, that can begin discussing ways in which we can gather our land and put it together in parcels that we can begin first along the GIWW and the tributary canals and bayous, shoring up those banks so we don't have shoreline creep and that we do not have erosion of those lands into our wetlands. These are our priorities today. It has been a long run, and I will say it's been a very difficult run, but the successes that the America's Wetland Foundation has had with its programs and awareness that wetlands are essential to the success and national security and economy of not only our region but the country as a whole have been pretty remarkable. People do know when there are hurricanes that wetlands are an important part of the story today where they didn't 15 years ago. And we're now to the point of discussing why these lands that we used to think as really discarded places and the place where you would go throw an old refrigerator or a used car have become so valuable and a valuable ingredient in the DNA of South Louisiana so that we can have healthy and vibrant communities for our children and their children. I'll stop at this point.
Well, thank you. Wow. What an amazing perspective that is of what's going on. And again, I shared with you before the meeting, I'm located in one of the communities in South Louisiana where you probably used to go fishing. And again, we witnessed that shoreline creep even on the bayous. I know that Intracoastal Waterways has a greater possibility for impact, but again, even here, or Fauga Canal, you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Again, we see the bank degrade, it seems like daily. And, it's a pretty overwhelming thing. I received an email from a friend of mine from Detroit a couple of weeks ago, and he very proudly began his headline with draining the swamp. Now, he was speaking about another issue not related to coastal Louisiana, but it just reminded me of how the world thinks of a swamp inherently as a negative thing. How do we overcome that?
Well, we believe that in the next 20 years there will be a process of that's called ecosystem valuing, meaning that large companies to move beyond liability for damaging or destroying lands will agree to the values of certain natural resources that support their work. And it started over in Europe already, and I think in California there are some places where you can value, let's say, a square mile of land that supports or prohibits storm surge from moving into a community. There's been a recent study out of LSU that talked about the billions of dollars that we are facing without coastal restoration in Louisiana. And that, in a somewhat of a default way, begins to value those ecosystems too. So the land that we thought was land you could discard is now showing that when it covers pipelines, protects navigation routes, supports the salt water moving into farmlands, does have a value. And once we place a value on it, I think that's going to be a futuristic way of banking our natural resources in a good and positive direction.
Thank you. Actually, that report was our very first meeting. Gary Cicchini with RAND spoke on the economic impact very eloquently, but then he is also one of our charter members of Rotary. And actually, now you can take your phone off of mute if you'd like, and I think we'll open this up to questions for Val or for just Rotary in general.
Well,
Okay, sorry, everybody should be able to speak now. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, Val, this is Philip. I really wanted to piggyback on what Charles was saying. Great presentation. I was really taken by a couple of comments that you made. One in particular, that people in Louisiana don't realize they live in a coastal state. That is such a true statement. When we think of coastal states, we think of Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida, in particular Texas. But I don't really even think of Texas much as a coastal state.
Well, they don't either.
The Mississippi and Alabama, they have that very small coastal footprint, but I go to the beach there, and so I'm thinking, well, that's a coastal state. So that was one thing that really hit me. The other was the value that you've demonstrated when you have a government-directed work, or a government-directed work like the 2017 master plan and what the federal government's going to do and state government's going to try to do programs that you were able to do on a very small scale, something that actually worked. And I think part of that ability is that it had to work because this was private money that you didn't want to waste. And that wasn't more private money following after this. It was the dump truck worth of money that we'll just try this here. You did something, you applied something for a relatively low cost, $1 million for a mile. That's less than it costs to build a highway. And you were actually able to have positive results, which I think is really amazing. And I look forward to seeing more of that occur.
Well, our belief is that we will not win this war if it's just government doing the work. The government has to do the work that they need to do on spending large federal dollars. But the state, and we've been very happy with the state, with Johnny Bradbury in charge of the Coastal Protection Restoration Authority, is having conversations about how some of the state's work could be done by a private contract. So this is the way it works. It's like building a developer building a home. They have these firms that we're in touch with that did our project, that they'll go out and get to an investor and say, I have $20 million from the state of Louisiana to restore this land. And we're going to do it for $19 million and bring $1 million return if you give us the money up front so we don't have to wait 20 years to get the job done. And that's a good, sound business principle to go on, and they are tied to a timeline for completion, a bonus for early completion, and using different products that don't cost as much. And that's what we did, and we tried to prove it so that we could go out and then take mitigation dollars, for example, pool those and use those monies against an investor pool to get the work done quickly, because we don't have a lot of time. And the private sector can deliver these goods pretty quickly.
That was impressive. We're unmuted. Anyone else have a question for Val?
Very good. Well, we are, again, the meeting's recorded. Anybody can, take advantage of this information through our archive online. Philip, I know you had just some sort of Rotarian type of questions.
Yeah, I'm unable to see the individuals who are on the call, but if we do have individuals who are in the E-Rotary Coastal Club, I would like to open it up to ask for suggestions from each other. I think I've emailed everyone and spoke to most everyone in the last week. The things that we're looking for in the next few weeks is, one, to establish some kind of a service project that we can actually work on together as a group. The other one is to continue to recruit additional speakers like Val today, which is a phenomenal speaker. If you have an idea for a speaker, I would love to hear that suggestions, even today. We have opportunities for membership, so if you know of individuals who would enjoy being in this club and the convenience of the club, I'd love to get that discussion started. So with that, open it up to see if anyone has any suggestion on a service project we could get involved in.
Well, this is I'm not a Rotarian. This is Val Marmillion again. But as we put together the register of projects and the alliance, we'd like to work with you guys across the coast and get alliances. It could be a service project to get alliance members to talk about their needs in terms of the banks being compromised by saltwater, ways that we could add them to the alliance.
Well, Val, let me just follow that up. There is a Rotary International Foundation. They have what's called local grants, where you can apply for a district grant to do projects. But really, what you're talking about is that forming those alliances, we could probably look into going after a Rotary International Foundation grant, which is they're pretty significant as far as dollar-wise, because it would involve a lot of different people, cover a lot of different Rotary districts or a lot of different Rotary clubs in our district, and bring in other partners, especially if you're working with other individuals outside of the District 6200 South Louisiana to assist in this effort. That would be something I'd love to talk to you about in the future.
Well, we can do it offline, and I'll be happy. Lisa could set up a call. And in the broader sense, I loved what was said by one of you at the beginning, that this could become a national coastal or even international coastal alliance. We're very keen on developing partnerships up and down the Atlantic and having these discussions, because Louisiana, for once, can be a leader in coastal science and engineering, and we can export that leadership. So there's a lot of opportunity here for us to talk about, and we look forward to it.
Very good. Anyone else?
Okay. Well, very good. Well, that is our meeting for today. Again, another phenomenal information, and we are most grateful to Val and also to Lisa Noble, who helped facilitate this. We will meet, and not next Thursday, but the week following, and please watch your emails, and also please follow us on Facebook. You'll find a lot of activity there on what's going on. Again, thank you, everybody, for joining us, and have a great week.
Thank you, Val.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.